Welcome to our STARS virtual session tonight. Our topic is College to Career at the Humanities. So this is one of three sessions that we've been doing this month on that college to career focus. We did a STEM one earlier this month and a social sciences, and today we're talking about humanities. So I'm going to get us started, and we're going to start by introducing our panelists or our speakers today. So I'll just start with myself, and then we can kind of go down the list. So I'm Jennifer Blazik. I am at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I actually run, I'm part of the STARS College Network, but I run a unique program called College for Rural Wisconsin, which focuses on rural college access for our students in Wisconsin. And I'm part of in the Division of Enrollment Management. So I'll go next to Drew if you want to introduce yourself.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Drew Goodwin. I'm a Senior Assistant Director of Admissions at Colby College, located in Waterville, Maine. Thank you all so much for joining us to this evening. The humanities is something that I am very passionate about, so I'm so excited that you have joined us tonight. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ian Gregory Davis, use he, him pronouns, Senior Assistant Director, as well as the Director of Rural Outreach at Columbia University in New York City, and excited to be here with you all.
Hello and good evening. My name is Risa Tewksbury. I'm Associate Director of the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. I use she, her pronouns. Flip to the opposite coast from Ian out there in New York, and excited to be with you this evening.
Awesome. So I'm just going to cover a few housekeeping things, introduce you to STARS. So we don't have a chat feature. We have a Q&A feature. So if you have questions at all during the presentation, please use that feature. Then we'll get your questions and we'll address those at the end. But you can ask them anytime for any of our panels on any topic that you have. So please use that Q&A feature. And again, this is recorded, so you can always access it on our YouTube channel after we're done presenting. If you have any things that you want to refer to, we have some links at the end that you might want to be able to access again, and you can definitely see that presentation again in the recording on our YouTube channel. But let's talk a little bit about STARS. So we are all STARS coordinators, program directors for our institutions, and you can see all the current founding members that we have there's 16 of us. So we're just a few of all the institutions that are across the country that are part of the STARS College Network, which is small town and rural students. So a little bit about STARS. So what we are is we're really about college access for rural and small town students across the country. So we work together as a network, as a consortium of these selective institutions to really do education and outreach for rural and small town students, specifically for college going. So we provide a lot of programs, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the things. This virtual session is a great example of some of the things that we're doing, but we're really coming together to really make sure that we provide some great pathways for students to our institutions, because we know how important you as rural and small town students are to our institutions, and also to give back so that you can come, get educated, and then return to your hometowns. So a little bit about some of the programs that we do. So virtual sessions like this one is a lot. We do monthly, a couple times a month, virtual sessions on a wide variety of topics, everything from careers to college applications to even current student panels and everything in between. We also do a lot of travel. So we're going into your hometowns to visit with you and your peers. So we do a lot of on-campus and off-campus events as well, and programming. We do other college-going programs events. Some of us do focus on our state. Like, for example, I do a lot in our state, just going to visit, getting some college access outreach to high schools around our state. We do a lot of programs on campus as well. So we want to encourage you to come to our campus. A lot of times it's free for you, you to come and visit any of our campuses to learn more, to get a campus tour, meet current students, really get a sense of kind of some of your options and pathways to higher education. Again, I mentioned some of our virtual college access programming that we do. And then we're providing some internships as well for specifically, and all of these programs and events and activities that we're doing are really targeted at students just like you, rural and small town students across the country. And with that, and I just want to put a plug, so please join our newsletter if you haven't already, because then you can stay up to date on some of our upcoming programs that we have. We have virtual sessions, like I said, monthly, college fair, virtual college fairs, all these things that you can kind of stay up to date on throughout the year. And the newsletter is the best way for that. And don't worry, it doesn't spam you. It's not as frequent as some other newsletters like shopping. So it's a great way to stay up to date on this. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Risa to talk about humanities.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jennifer. So first off, first big question, what are the humanities? Some of you may have joined us tonight because you signed up for every session we were offering. Didn't matter. Hey, let's just hear from more colleges. Some of you may already know about the humanities. Maybe you have a passion for those areas. What you see on the screen here is how we at the University of Southern California in our liberal arts college have defined the humanities. But truly, the humanities, it has unlimited potential, covers lots of different areas. We think of it as the areas that make you a more thoughtful, astute, creative, passionate, critical thinking human being. And we're going to talk about some of those majors that fall into that area. When we think about the humanities, a lot of times when you're in high school, you're thinking about, I've got my science class, I have my social science class, but your high school doesn't usually say you have humanities classes, but you all do. You have lots of courses that you've taken already that fall in these areas, and those may be those classes that you really excelled in, so you're thinking about pursuing those going forward into college. So let's take a look at what some of those different kind of majors could look like. So looking at the humanities, this is breaking them into 4 big buckets. But I also want to preface that every one of our colleges, the 4 of us here tonight, as well as all of the colleges that you might be hearing from or looking at in your college search, are going to define humanities in maybe slightly different ways. I think we're all going to agree that English or English and literature majors are going to fall in the humanities. But some colleges put history in a different department. At the University of Southern California, we have 6 different schools of art. So if you said you wanted to study dance or music or theater or cinematic arts, those are going to be in different departments. But for a lot of colleges, all of those artistic ventures, all of the things in language and cultural studies and religion and history, those are all going to be in that larger category of the humanities. Some of the examples you'll see here, things like art history, film studies, majors in philosophy, religious studies. Some colleges will get even more specific. Instead of saying religious studies, maybe they'll say Judaic studies or study of Buddhism. You may have a school that has a major in philosophy, or you may have an interdisciplinary major of philosophy, politics, and law, where they're all combined into one degree program. So there isn't just one answer. Like if you say you want to be a biology major, that pretty much converts to all of our different institutions. But if you want to say humanities, it's going to look a little different depending on the different colleges. But there's a lot of range, a lot of area for you to just really dive into those human questions, understanding, making connections. And that's all a really big piece of what the humanities are about. So I'm going to pass it on to Drew, and he's going to talk a little bit more about those skills.
Yeah, thank you, Risa. So as Risa kind of talked about, like the humanities can be chopped up and looked at in a lot of different ways. And that's because the humanities majors really focus on very intense thought, very introspective, and very, very critical thinking and critical analysis of a lot of different areas. And so there's a reason why when you think about like a liberal arts education that pretty much every institution in the entire country is going to offer in some way, shape, or form, whether it's through the general education requirements or distribution requirements. The humanities are like the heart and the soul of that liberal arts education, because it is going to be that thing that helps you develop your communication skills, your writing skills, your speaking skills, being able to present your ideas verbally in a way that makes coherent sense. I think a lot of times some people think they are making a lot of sense and they're talking and they're very forceful with what they're saying. And then if you really look at it, you're like, well, what were they saying? And how did they really, structure this in a way that made sense? So those verbal communication skills are going to be a really important part of that. There's also going to be some really great research skills and the ability to synthesize really complex materials. The humanities, again, are really this, like, I like to think of them as like an ocean, and each different like peak of a different wave all kind of works against and with each other in different ways. And so you might be studying even, thinking about like Judaic studies or Islamic studies, and that's not just going to be necessarily the strict literal text of those particular religions, but it also encompasses the culture of those places that practice that religion. It's also going to encompass the politics and the other cultural aspects that might exist in there, and how do you make coherent thoughts out of all these different types of things that work together. Foreign language is also a really big part of that. I think we hear a lot about foreign language kind of, going the way of the dinosaurs, no longer important. But that being said, when you learn a foreign language, it does more for you than Google Translate ever could. Yes, Google Translate can get you by on a fun trip somewhere, but that ability to connect with people in their native language and to really understand culturally how a language is shaped around the culture and how the culture is shaped around the language really allows you to understand that. So like if you don't study Spanish, for example, you don't understand that Spanish has this fun relationship with time at points where like time is this thing that kind of exists, but like it always doesn't matter. Like there's a word that you can say in Spanish that means right now, but right now could mean in 2 hours. Right now could mean in, 4 weeks. It could be something like that. So you don't get that cultural understanding without thinking about that. And I've already talked a little bit about, analytical thinking and problem solving skills. And a lot of this can come from, you're having these conversations. Humanities classes are going to be a lot more conversation based. It's not this sitting in a lecture and hearing one person's thought. It's thinking about, well, just because the textbook said that, is that true? Is that the best way to think about that? So really kind of breaking things down and not taking anything for face value is a big part of that. The creative out of the box thinking is also a really big part of that. So again, when you're bouncing ideas off of people, and ideally you're having a lot of different people with a lot of different perspectives and backgrounds and talents and skills, when you bounce these ideas, they can come back in really interesting ways. It allows you to find new creative solutions. And sometimes the solution is, do we have to do it that way? It can start with a question, and that question can lead to a better idea. And again, with this discussion, it allows you to build strong relationships with people. I think the strongest academic and intellectual relationships you can build with people are with people that you've had deep, intense conversations with and disagreed with on certain things, only to come back around and realize, oh my gosh, we think like on this other thing that's very different. And to see that, okay, these people that I'm with are nuanced and complex, which is a really great way to go about looking at relationships. Because the second that you think that, oh, that person's mean, or oh, that person's nice, you've shut down that relationship. You've shut down your ability to learn from that person. And so when you can bounce out those ideas and have different conclusions and the same conclusions as the same peer, can be really powerful. Persuasion is also a big piece of this. So can you convince someone that you're right? So when you're having these conversations, someone's like, well, no, I don't think you're right. But then you can kind of bring them around and present them with ideas. You can ideally do this using their own logic against them, which I think is a very, very fun tact and ability to do. And then flexibility and adaptability. So when you're thinking about all of these different things, being able to go with the flow and not marry yourself to a single idea. I find that students, they're so young and they think they have to take a stand. They have to stand for this one thing and they have to be right about this. But in the humanities, you learn that, well, just because I thought this was the right thing in this situation, is it the right thing in this other situation? And was that actually the right thing in that other situation before? And so having that flexibility is a really powerful thing, especially now where like it feels like the world changes every single day. Being able to have that flexibility and adaptability is going to be a really amazing skill. Thinking of skills, though, and I know I've talked a lot about skills, I want to talk about careers, because I think we hear a lot about, oh, the humanities again are going the way of the dinosaurs. They're not relevant anymore. They're not important. People who study the humanities don't have jobs. The data does not support that. So this is the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. So these people have a vested interest in both the arts and the humanities and the sciences, so they're not biased towards the arts and humanities. And so you can take a look at this breakdown of where humanities majors end up in the workforce afterwards. And you can see some skews, right? There's a skew toward education. There's a skew towards legal work. A lot of folks will study in the humanities on their way to law school. There's a skew in the arts, design, entertainment, and media, which can be expected because the arts are part of this big humanities umbrella. But there's also some that are going to surprise you, like business and finance. All college graduates and humanities graduates work in that area in pretty much the exact same way. There's only a percentage point difference, which I'm not always convinced is like super statistically relevant, right? When you look at management, dead on, right there. Services and sales, pretty again, within 1%. So when you think about humanities, I think students tend to shy away from the humanities because they're like, oh, what does an English major do? Or what does a history major do? Or what does a religious studies major do? Well, they do a lot of the same things that college graduates overall do, right? And it's because their education is so skills based that if I'm, Goldman Sachs or pick your, investment firm, I don't want all of my people to be, business and finance majors, right? They're going to know what they know and they're going to know things that have already happened. But I might pick up that philosophy major, right? Or I might pick up that, Spanish major and say, hey, they're going to think differently. They're going to find things that these other people aren't. And I want that dynamism within my team, and I want that skill set within my team. So in addition to being like really fascinating, incredible intellectual journeys, the humanities provide you really in-demand skills that a lot of people want up and down the area, or up and down the employment areas. So, and then also, again, if you look at unemployment rates, again, engineering, business, humanities all have the exact same unemployment rates. In natural sciences a tick lower, but again, still looking at that high school only, that unemployment rate, the average unemployment rate over the past couple of years is going to be a lot lower. So you have that world is your oyster feeling where there's a whole wide world of careers you can go into, and then that unemployment rate is going to be lower than and comparable, lower than high school graduates, but comparable to other college graduates at the exact same time. So the reports of my death are greatly exaggerated is a wonderful misquote to Mark Twain. It also applies to the humanities as well. But I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Ian to talk a little bit more about this.
Thanks so much, Drew. Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about life at college as a humanities major. And I think you can probably already tell from our presentation that there's really no one set path. And I think that's one thing that students really appreciate is all of the varying ways that you can ultimately kind of go as a humanities major in college. So we're going to take a look at the college journey as a humanities major. And the first thing I think is you all are considering the courses that you're taking throughout your high school career is that in terms of really any of the humanities majors, there aren't really specific courses that we're ultimately going to be looking for you to have taken, but it's going to be your kind of traditional college prep curriculum. So we'd love to see kind of a balanced curriculum with classes in certainly the sciences and math and science, as well as history, English, and a global language. Of course, if your school offers them certain art elective courses, could be really wonderful as a way for you to explore some of these areas. So perhaps it's in dance, theater, studio art, film, music, right? Again, not necessarily required, but a way for you to begin to explore some of these areas beyond kind of the core academic areas that you may pursue throughout your high school experience. If for any reason there are courses that are not offered at your high school, and it's possible to look into dual enrollment courses within some of those areas, that might be a really great option. And then what are kind of some of those humanities interests outside of the classroom, right? Maybe you're involved in your local theater group, maybe you're participating in county or statewide band and chorus initiatives. So there are certainly ways that you're able to kind of pursue your interests within the humanities outside of the time that you're actually in class. And then something to consider when you're ultimately applying to colleges is whether they offer the opportunity for you to submit an arts portfolio. Again, that is not something that is necessarily going to be required by every school, even if you are interested in pursuing something in the humanities or in the arts. But you might very well be able to submit an art portfolio, a music, dance, theater portfolio as a supplement to your application. If this is something that is really meaningful to you, that you've spent quite a bit of time on throughout your high school experience, and you really want to be able to share that with the admission committee. Also, the opportunity for summer programs, right? Ultimately, kind of to get on campus and kind of see what is possible. So there might be fly-in programs, there might be humanities related work or internships and competitions. Again, so this is entirely up to you in terms of your passions. There's not really anything that we're specifically looking for, but seeking out some of those opportunities, right? And sharing your passion with us throughout the application process. And then in terms of academic advising, right, once you get to college, one of the things, of course, that you will be doing is declaring a major and completing any major specific requirements. So again, as my colleagues have mentioned, it's very likely that you would pursue humanities-based courses simply just through general requirements for the college or university. But then, of course, you're going to be able to take a deeper dive into the classes that are really, really exciting for you within your specific humanities major. In terms of the kind of college search and campus visit and virtual tours, just kind of wrapping that up as well, I think in terms of the college search, the availability of those desired majors that I was just talking about, right? I think that's something that will be really helpful for you to get a sense of the schools that you're looking at. Do they have those majors within the humanities that are exciting to you, and what are the spaces like on campus? And I think you can get that through certainly a visit to campus, but also a virtual tour, right? A lot of the virtual tours now will be able to take you really into the spaces that you would be able to use and contribute to when you're in when you're on the college campus. So I think looking for the performance and design spaces, right, and the places where you might spend a large chunk of your time in college, really kind of working on your craft. And then ultimately, once you're kind of at college, you've declared your major, you're working through those courses, is the career advising, right? And so the internships and the research networking opportunities that you're going to be able to have, leaning on the professors of the major that you're pursuing, and of course the career advising, which certainly does not just work for students that are maybe more interested in the STEM fields, but are going to work for all students. So that's just a little bit about kind of the college journey, but I want to make sure we get to sharing some examples of students' journeys through the humanities, and I'll turn it back over to Drew.
Great, awesome. Well, to start with our first student profile, this is Uzoma, or he goes by Zoe. He was a philosophy major at Colby, and he had a really interesting background. He ultimately attended high school in West Hartford, Connecticut, but he was born in Chicago and spent a lot of his childhood in Nigeria. And when he was living in Nigeria, he really got this sense of, his family had, a little bit more privilege coming from a background where they lived in the States and moving back to Nigeria. And so for him, it really sparked this interest in equality. So I think this is like the first way that I see his brain thinking like a humanities major, right? Where you're like, is that fair? Like, does it really make sense that I have these things and these opportunities when someone doesn't? Like, is the status quo something that I want to accept, or is there a way that can be challenged or turned back over? So when he came to Colby, he ultimately studied philosophy along with sociology. And while on campus, he specifically fought for better working conditions for custodial staff. And this is something that I think is pretty like radical in a really cool way, that when he's thinking about, is the way that things are happening the right way to do it? Is this a just way for us to be treating these custodial staff? Is this the right way we should be doing this? Thinking about, what are better ways we can do this? If the status quo isn't guaranteed, what can we do given that it's not guaranteed? So to that end, he ultimately earned a master's degree in criminal justice at Cambridge University in the UK. And working through that master's program, he co-founded with some friends Amelia, which is a nonprofit aiming to help those incarcerated communicate for free. So it's been in the news quite a bit. There's like some DOJ weird stuff happening with that right now, where like prison inmates have to communicate with these really old phones that don't work, and they're $1 a minute. And if you're incarcerated and you don't have, like, you're not making money, your family members might be low income and might not be able to afford, a 20-minute phone call with you, because $20 is a lot to talk to someone on the phone for 20 minutes. So he thought about this and said, there has to be a better way to do this. There has to be a way for inmates to be able to communicate with their loved ones and can communicate with the people at home in a way that that it's not cost prohibitive. So he founded this really great nonprofit, and working with this nonprofit, he really wanted to marry this like sense of criminal justice as well as working within the law, but also I think the entrepreneurial spirit. I think we often think of like entrepreneurship as being in this for-profit sphere, but the entrepreneurial spirit is this really wide thing where it can involve these nonprofits where you want to start something yourself. That entrepreneurial spirit is about building something new out of nothing. And so in that nonprofit sphere, it's about building something new out of nothing that changes something for people around the world or changes for something for people in certain communities. So in order to kind of further this sense of justice and this sense of right and wrong and this sense of challenging the status quo that he started at Colby, he is currently doing a dual degree law degree and MBA at Yale. So this is just kind of a little bit of his journey so far. But if you see it thinking about like, okay, philosophy, how does philosophy turn into, you know, a job? For this student, it turned into this really incredible nonprofit that he decided to create with some friends. And so it's a really kind of interesting arc. But again, if the status quo isn't given, what is the possibility moving forward? But I'm going to go ahead and pass it along, I think, to Risa. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Drew. So this student is one of USC's, she's a graduate from USC Promita. She had a different tact in that, you know, when you look back at Drew's chart about, you know, what careers that students go into, not a lot of students start out in humanities with the intention of going to medical school. Pramita always knew she wanted to go into a medical or a health related field, but she had a passion for the humanities. She really wanted to study languages. Actually, even back when she applied for admission, she was trying to decide between being a Latin major or a French major. So she knew she had that passion. So that's where she started out, even though she knew what she wanted was her end goal going into medicine. So in high school, she took the most rigorous courses offered at her high school. She did tap out what was available in foreign languages, so she was supplementing what she did in high school at her local college, taking additional foreign language classes there. We always encourage students, you know, take the most rigorous courses available to you. And if you need to go beyond that or supplement that, either through things like the STARS network supports your access to Schoolhouse and Khan Academy, or going to your local community college or a nearby university like Pramita did. In the high school, she was very involved in a lot of service-based organizations. And that's fairly typical for students that want to go into a life of some type of service. She was very involved in Tea Club. She was a regional leader for her area. Mock trial, academic decathlon. These might sound like activities for somebody going into law school. She knew that wasn't for her. She was very interested in going on in med school, as I said. So she came to USC as a French major. As Drew mentioned, and as when I was talking about major choices, she was also very interdisciplinary. She did 2 minors in addition to her major. She studied French as well as art history, and then also had her pre-med options that she was doing as well. Lots of different things that she was studying, going along with her degree program. Activities in college, again, she was very service oriented. So she got involved in one of the major USC service organizations, USC Helene. They do a lot of service work in the community in the greater Los Angeles area, doing outreach and engagement. She also did a study abroad program in Paris. And one of the things I loved when I contacted her about this presentation, she said when she studied in France, one of the things that she thought was there was no better opportunity to learn what it was like to be dealing with a foreign language when that wasn't a skill set she fully had yet when she went to Paris, in terms of preparing to talk to patients in a hospital setting that don't really understand medical language, medical technology. And she said she always refers back to that experience she had in Paris as a non-native speaker, and thinking about that and that compassion that she, you know, and empathy that she has for those patients and those family members she's working with, just from that experience that she had while she was in Paris. She also did 2 service trips. One of them was with Doctors Without Borders, and you know, using her foreign language skills. So she studied in, did service work in Haiti, post there, dramatic natural events there that really caused a lot of disruption, that was able to do service work, medical related work there while she was there. She continued on in those same kinds of things in terms of the kind of hospice and palliative medicine that she wanted to pursue. She went to Yale University for the School of Medicine, and she's now doing a fellowship at the University of California in San Francisco in that same area. And so you can kind of see that trajectory of that humanities base, all those skill sets that Drew talked about, those things you're getting from the humanities, and how they play such an important role in the type of medicine that she chose to pursue. Those communication skills, the empathy, the listening skills, to be able to look at approaches to different ways to solve problems that might be working with those different family members, those patients. So it really brings it all back around again, but also a very unique path, because it didn't mean she couldn't be a doctor because she wanted to study the humanities. The skill set that she got still allowed room to take those natural sciences she needed for medical school, but continue the work in the areas that she was most passionate about. So now we're going to pass it on. I think that, back to you.
Thanks, Risa. I'm going to talk a little bit about Billy. Billy attended high school in Queens, New York, before coming to Columbia and pursuing dual interests in comparative literature and society, as well as Greek studies at Columbia College. Billy is really excited about the idea of ultimately attending law school, but I think one of the things that is so exciting about some of these kind of pre-professional programs is that you don't necessarily need to study the exact major, right, that you might think of to go on to medical school, to go on to law school. And so Billy really pursued these passions that he had academically, well, as you'll see, all of the things that he was engaging in through some of his extracurricular work. So while he was at Columbia, I was able to participate in the undergraduate law review, as well as the Latin American and Iberian Cultures Undergraduate Research Journal, started and recorded a podcast, as well as created a gallery of archival images about the aftermath of the Greco-Turkish War in 1922, conducted some research, as well as pursued a few other internships throughout his 4 years. So I think part of this, right, is yes, of course, it's what you're going to be studying, what you're going to be majoring in, but all of the other opportunities that you're going to have in college that you'll be able to engage with, but that will really help kind of shape your college journey and your path ultimately once you complete college. And so now Billy is a JD candidate at the NYU Law School, but he was able to get there while pursuing these academic passions that might not necessarily, students might not think that is the kind of the path, right, to get to law school. So able to really engage in a variety of different opportunities outside of his academic studies as well. So that's a little bit about Billy, and I'll turn it over to Jennifer.
Thanks, Dan. So for our last student that we want to introduce you to, I'm going to introduce you to Kellyanne. And so she is a great example of, so Ian talked about kind of some of those academic pursuits, the importance of that. And Kellyanne is a great example of showcasing the importance of networks and taking advantage of experiences that kind of get you places, right? So you start in humanities, and then you could end up anywhere just because of the people that you know, the people that you meet in some of these internships and experiences outside of the coursework that you're taking. So Kellyanne is from a farm in rural Wisconsin, went to a small town high school, very small population. You can see 1,400 people. There are no AP classes offered at that high school. So thankfully, the school was located pretty close to one of our system schools, the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. So she was able to take some dual enrollment courses there to really boost some of that academic rigor before she then attended University of Wisconsin-La Crosse for her humanities in Spanish and English and honors. While there, she was a cheerleader, so taking advantage of some of those extracurricular, co-curricular activities, and did a study abroad in Chile. Always kind of a little interested in agriculture, grew up on a farm, not really interested in production or getting involved in kind of that area, but always really interested in supporting the agriculture industry and making change and kind of being an advocate for the industry. So kind of those lines got her to University of Wisconsin-Madison. So she didn't start at Madison, she went somewhere else, then came here for grad school. So she did a Master's of Arts in Journalism, kind of again, that communication, advocacy work. Then she realized while at Madison, there was a great opportunity for policy and kind of interest in law. So she, through a lot of experiences and connections, got into law school here at University of Wisconsin-Madison, founded the first ever food and agriculture law club in the law school. Because ironically, even though Wisconsin, you think cows, our law school is not in that high into agriculture and food law areas, so not too many courses. So she found a need to start a club so that students who are interested in that area could do some more experiences to boost their knowledge and skills in that space. And because of that connection, then that led her to a bunch of internships and experiences. She worked for a time at the Harvard Food Law and Policy Clinic, the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, and the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. All of these were purely because of networks from meeting folks, taking advantage of the opportunities that came her way and the connections that she made, which then ultimately led her to where she now works at the White House, purely doing agriculture and rural development policy work. So at the federal level, which is really exciting. So again, a really good example of showcasing the importance of networks and how humanities and the people that you meet can take you anywhere, as you can see from our 4 very different students and backgrounds and areas of expertise, which is why we really wanted to profile some students to show you that, again, back to what Drew said, humanities isn't dead. There's a lot of opportunities there. You just have to be open and flexible to the pathways that it can lead you. So we wanted to share with you some resources for each of our colleges. Again, this is a lot of links. I know that it's not clickable for you. So feel free to take a screenshot, or again, it'll be recorded so you can access it anytime afterwards on our YouTube channel. So I'm just going to go through kind of what you can find in each of these resources. So all colleges, all universities, all schools will have websites where you can go and access any of these resources and information. Of course, the course guide or course catalog is a really important resource. That is where you're going to find the whole list of all the courses available. It'll tell you the modality. Is it online, in person? It will, or a mix, a hybrid. It will tell you the prerequisites for those courses. So any courses you have to take ahead of time. It's a great way to go into, so we gave you some examples of majors. Say you're interested in one of the humanities majors, right? So now you can go look up at our schools or any of those schools and see what courses you would take in that major, right? Does any of those appeal to you? Do they speak to you in those courses? So that's a great way to get kind of a sense of what courses you'd be taking through those majors. We have links to our career advising. So again, really important, right? Those networks, the internship opportunities that you can have. So there's a lot of support on any campus, especially ours that we have here, where you can get support from professionals in your field around career advising, college fairs, all these kind of things that all our campuses offer for any student, and this is particularly for humanities, of course. Now, research programs, you think of research, you think of STEM, you think of social sciences, but you can do research in humanities too. So it's not just for those students. So think about research as a great opportunity. As you could see from some of our students, they did participate in research opportunities that then led them to careers or other pathways. So it's a great way to explore your academic path, get hands-on experience relevant to maybe if you're thinking of graduate or professional school, like some of our students that we gave examples of. It's a great way to consider a career. They could lead you down to internships. It also could make you eligible for scholarship and grants. So these are all important things to think about when you're considering research programs. And it's just a really great way overall to really boost your curiosity and grow academically. So it's a really important thing that even humanities students, especially humanities students, should think about, because it's another opportunity you have. Of course, we have our admissions links there. So this is information of how to apply to our institutions. Some things to keep in mind for UW-Madison, if you're interested in dance or music, there'll be information about you have to apply to the university, but you also have to do a second application just for those fields, and then additions as well. So things to keep in mind, especially in some of the areas of humanities and arts that might require a little extra work or some more materials that you need to submit as part of your application. So we'll have that information on all of our admission sites. And then student life, we talked a little bit about FIT, college search and selection. FIT is an important piece of that. And so our student life for organizations that we have on our campuses, there's a great list there, some things you can browse, you can check out what's available, what speaks to you, whether that, I know there's a question about that, we can talk more about it. But that's a great way to see if any of our campuses are a good fit for you, right? We might have the major interested in, but what does it mean to be a student on campus? What's it like? Where do I live? Who do I meet? What is the community? What is the culture on campus? So these are all things that you can access to get a sense for. And of course, it doesn't preclude a virtual visit or even an in-person visit. So always keep that in mind as well if you have the means to do that or participate in some of our STARS programs, which offer that opportunity to get you on our campus for free. So those are things to keep in mind too. And that's a good segue into our questions. So I know we have a couple questions on the Q&A. So does anybody want to take the first one? So what student organizations and clubs related to the humanities are available on campus?
I can go ahead and start us off, and another Risa will have a lot to say about that as well. But yeah, so there's a lot of ways to get involved in the humanities, even if you are like interested in philosophy, but you still love music and the arts. There's going to be things like theater clubs on campus, the stereotypical a cappella clubs on campus, the different ensembles and things like that. So a lot of schools, you don't have to be majoring in like a particular thing to be involved in an extracurricular sense. There might be those things that are like audition only, right? That are or things that are just for majors, but that doesn't mean there's not going to be clubs and interests related to a lot of these humanities fields as well. I know we talked a little bit about students interested in law school. Debate and mock trial are always really great ones to get in. They practice some of those things, those same critical thinking, verbal presentation skills that you're going to be doing a lot of in your class. So when you talk to people on mock trial teams, a lot of them are usually humanities majors. But I'm going to let Reese talk a little bit more about that as well, because I'm sure she'll have some great things to share.
Just as Drew was saying, there are so many different types of organizations. It's not going to be limited to that relatively small list that you had in high school. There's going to be so many different types of organizations. When we say at our campus, for example, if you say a religious organization, we have 93 different religious organizations because there's all different types of religions. Some are comparative literature groups, some are Bible study groups, some are small groups that are going to go out and visit different types of religious settings just to learn about different religions. There are so many different opportunities for you to explore beyond your major. We have a program called Peaks and Professors, where we take students out on hikes around Southern California and the Santa Monica Mountains and up to Mammoth and different places. And they'll have conversations about philosophical conversation with the professor as they're on their hike. So, you get up to that peak and you're having that epiphany or that moment where you're actually sharing that with faculty members and fellow students. There are so many ways for you to engage with your majors outside of the classroom. And I think we would all agree a big part of your growth in college is going to be outside the classroom. So we love that you asked that question about how do you engage. But as Drew said, there's clubs regarding theater and music and dance. And as I said, religious studies, but we also have writing groups and, book groups where you can get together and discuss novels on campus and, those kinds of things. So every type of area of humanities is going to be represented in organizations as well.
Before we move on, I know that I saw another question in the chat. I want to stay on this topic of extracurriculars before we kind of meander away. But there's a student who's asking a little bit about like what extracurriculars like look good on a college application. So what should you participate in to be a better candidate for college admissions? Does anyone have any thoughts on that question?
I can jump in. I completely understand that question for sure. I think ultimately my colleagues and I would all share with you that we want to see on your application what you're really passionate about and what interests you. There isn't any one thing that we're necessarily looking for. And I do think that your passion for whatever you are ultimately pursuing will come through in the application, right? If you have the opportunity to submit some sort of art portfolio, I think that is a really wonderful way for us to get a sense of your passion for whatever you're pursuing. But that might not always be possible depending on the university that you're applying to, or you just may not have simply pursued that, and that is also okay, right? But whatever it is that you're pursuing throughout your high school career, that is ultimately what we want to see, and we'll be really excited to kind of see that authentic, very honest version of who you are come through in your application.
I'm going to just tag on to that really quickly because quite frankly, I know a lot of our students, especially our STARS students, sometimes you're working, you're helping support your family, you're helping cover, your cell phone bill or the gas to the car to get you to school or to your outside activities. You may not have time for all of those different kinds of organizations. That's totally fine. We have no set criteria that says you need to be in a certain number of clubs or you need to have played a sport or an instrument or that you did volunteer work. I know we had another student ask about doing volunteer work or community service. If you have the time and opportunity to do those activities and you are interested in them, you are passionate about them, you're not doing them just because you think we want to see those, then I say, yes, do them. It's going to look great when you can speak to that and speak to why you are interested in those activities. But if it doesn't fit in your schedule because you are working as soon as you leave school or you're taking care of that younger sibling after school, please don't feel it's a requirement that you fit that in. We would love for you to sleep at night. So we want you to fit that into your schedule. So don't panic that there's a set list of what you need to do. We love to see the diversity of activities from our students, whether it be clubs and organizations, leadership, service, volunteer work. Maybe it's volunteer work that you only did 1 week over the summer with your church group, and that's the only time you had available in your schedule to do volunteer work. That's not less meaningful than the student that was involved in a weekly club on campus if you were involved in other things during the school year. So just think about what's available to you and what you're most passionate about. And it's okay if it has nothing to do with your major. You don't have to be involved in a club related to humanities if you want to study the humanities, or the arts if you're going into the arts. Just know that you've got lots of time to make those final choices.
Okay, anybody else want to speak to those questions before? It looks like we have a couple others that especially around financial aid and scholarships, that we want to answer on. So I can start. So at UW-Madison, so there's kind of two questions right now, and I'll read them just for the benefit of the audience in case you can't see them. So are there any scholarships or financial aid opportunities specifically for humanities students? And then the other one is there financial aid available specifically for rural and low income students going into the humanities? And so I can just answer quickly for UW-Madison. So most of the major specific, anything related to major specific for us is going to be in our scholarships, available for scholarships, because that's where we kind of get more into that criteria, merit-based scholarships, some need-based scholarships. So not specifically until you fill out the scholarship application, which of course you need to do FAFSA. That's really important. So always do FAFSA no matter what. I'll push that, but when it comes to humanities in general, it's mostly in scholarships. Now for our rural and low income students, yes, there's financial aid. Again, for rural, mostly on our campus, it's scholarships again. Most of them are need-based scholarships. And then of course, for low income students, we have Pell eligibility. We also have some programs. I think there was a question about full ride somewhere along the way. We do, if you're a Wisconsin resident and you have a adjusted gross income of 65,000 or less, then you can get a full ride for us. So we do have some of that. That's specifically for Wisconsin residents. So that's the full ride program for 4 years, tuition, full ride tuition. And then we of course offer some Pell, so some federal financial aid that for low income students as well, that can get you to full ride to tuition completely if you're eligible for that. But I'll let other my colleagues chime in too.
Yeah, I do like to emphasize, I think, I mean, as myself, having gone to college as a first-gen low-income student who studied the humanities, I think we often think of like the humanities is the realm of like these wealthy elite people who can afford, to do all of these, sitting around and thinking all day in the ivory tower. But a lot of students that study the humanities and a lot of the students that are so passionate about this are not necessarily always those students that are, I think, are stereotypically those humanities or philosophy majors or whatever you might have. So I think every school is going to have a lot of really great financial opportunities for students, regardless of their major. But I think that when thinking about that's regardless of your major, you should be studying what you're passionate about. So we've talked a lot about the skills-based education that the humanities provides you. And so thinking about, okay, I want to study something I'm passionate about, and I want to make sure that it's affordable. So looking at the financial aid, and especially the need-based financial aid that institutions can offer you, is a really great way to say, okay, I'm going to be a humanities major, and I'm really excited to study this thing, but how can I make this work financially? Because a lot of schools really want to make sure that, if you're at a table of philosophy students and they're all from like the upper 1% or the upper 10% income bracket, that's probably not going to be the most interesting philosophy conversation. No offense to those folks, but when you have that diversity in the humanities classroom with those conversations, that's a really important part of what we think about when we're trying to build classes of students, and thinking about, what does that diversity in the classroom look like from that background perspective.
No, I just very, very quickly want to highlight again the opportunities to visit some of our campuses, not only our institutions, but those within the STARS network through fly-ins and drive-ins that are opportunities that are going to be fully paid for you, right? So if finances might be an issue in ultimately getting to one of our campuses, certainly be on the lookout for opportunities to apply for fly-in programs. There's one question about are all the programs on the STARS College Network page? Not necessarily. So that's something where it would be important to look for those opportunities on the college websites in addition to the STARS College Network website.
We addressed a little bit, but maybe what kind of academic support and resources are available to humanities students? That might be a good one to kind of finish up with, because I think that'll probably take us to time.
I'll go ahead and start us off. So schools are going to do a lot of these resources a little bit differently, but I think the first thing that I mentioned is that at any of our schools, you're going to end up having, especially in the humanities, like the humanities don't work, like I mentioned, in a large lecture setting. So you're going to be able to build these relationships with your faculty members, and getting involved, and a lot of that support, that like first line of defense, is going to be those faculty members. They're going to be the ones, of course, teaching your classes and directing things. Even if there are like some TAs at some larger institutions, they're going to be your first line of defense in helping you figure out, okay, what am I not doing well? What am I doing well? And thinking about, I think in high school, you're in your history classes, your English classes, there's like one way things are done. And then I think a lot of students can struggle with that transition to a different expectation for a humanities major in the classroom. I think at the high school level, especially, it's like whoever talks the most gets a good participation grade. You might get a really bad participation grade if you don't say anything interesting. Like if you just sit there and like throw everything that sticks or everything at the wall and see what sticks, you might not get a good class participation grade. So how can you productively participate in that classroom setting? So I think that's a great way to start. And that professor is going to have a good sense of what research is happening on campus, what types of study abroad experiences are relevant to your interests, as well as maybe some internships and folks they're connected with. But you as a humanities major have access to any career advising that is offered at any single campus, any research advising that's offered on your campus. Just because you're a humanities major does not mean that, the people who do research are only expecting me to want to come and like dissect frogs or something like that. That's not the case. Research in the humanities could be, looking through a 1920s book from Spain and learning about like a niche, something about that. I'm not speaking from personal experience at all, of course. But there's a really wide variety of resources, and just because you're a humanities major doesn't preclude you from any of the wider resources that any institution might offer.
Okay, I'm just doing a quick look through at questions because we are down to a minute. So any last thoughts or any questions that you see you want to answer quick that I might not have be catching because I'm looking through here? I'll kind of let my colleagues have the last say here.
I'm just going to address the last question that I see real quick that hasn't been addressed about opportunities. Again, I strongly encourage you to check back to the STARS website. So whether you're looking to see if there's going to be an event in your hometown, or you're looking to see if there's another virtual event, or if a fly-in is offered, please make sure you continue heading back to that STARS website and checking the events. We're in the summer months right now, so most of our things are virtual right now, but we're going to be starting up a lot more fall travel. Our colleges will be visiting different areas, some collaboratively with a whole group of us traveling together, other times individually. So definitely keep watch on your email and check back at the STARS website.
Great. And then I just wanted to quickly address, and we talked a lot about like dual enrollment and that ability. And so there's a question about maybe how that transfers on the institution. I don't want to speak for everyone because it is very institution specific. And so I want to emphasize though that even though those dual enrollment classes, if you do have access to them, they're a great way to really, I think, show rigor on your transcript. Say, I'm going beyond what my school is offering. So even if that credit doesn't necessarily end up transferring the exact way that you hoped it did, it is going to help you with your college application and make it more strong, but it's also going to give you a lot of that experience that you can bring into your classroom, right? So if you've already had a conversation, so for example, I have read the book Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe 5 or 6 times. Every time I read it and with different people when I read it, and I have like book clubs and I talk about it, I get something different out of it. So you can really have this really neat thing where like maybe you've read this text before in this class that you're taking your sophomore year from a dual enrollment class in high school, but you're getting such different things out of it. And that's what makes a lot of these humanity classes so great, is that reasonable minds can disagree. Reasonable minds can come to very different conclusions and have very different thoughts on things. And you can always dig just that inch deeper every single time you look at something, every single time you have a conversation about something. And so that to me is really what the heart and the soul of the humanities is about, is like trying to keep digging and trying to keep pushing and understanding as much as possible. Because like the human condition for me is all about like knowing that you're never going to know everything, that you probably think you know something and you might not. And so to rehash it and rethink about it and have those conversations again is like one of the greatest pleasures in life for me personally, and I think for a lot of folks that do study the humanities. So it's exciting, it's fun, it's terrifying a little bit to know that there's like infinite nothingness out there, but it is still such an incredible endeavor, an incredible experience to be a humanities major and to be able to go into the world with that mindset. I think is something that I've really appreciated through my intellectual journey. But now I might be rambling a little bit, which verbosity is something that humanities majors are known for, so I'm probably on theme there.
No, I think that was a great conclusion, Drew. I think that was perfect. So I appreciate that. We are over time, but we did get started a little later, so I wanted to leave a little bit for that great exposition, which was awesome. So thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. Here you can see, again, we kind of touched on some of the stuff that we're doing with STARS, more to come. A lot of exciting things happening in the next, couple months, years. So join our newsletter, check our YouTube channels for the virtual sessions that you may have missed or you want to refresh and relook at them. There's a QR code. So I just want to thank you so much for joining us. That is the rest of the presentation. I think there's some answers still being going, so I'll kind of leave it going for a little bit. But if you need to jump off because it is after time, please do. Otherwise, we will try. I think we're going to finish answering some of these questions by text, and then otherwise we're all done for the night. So thanks for joining us.